Hey, good morning, everybody. Dave will be with us shortly. He's experiencing difficulties with his computer right now. He's trying to get things restarted, get up and running, etc., etc. He keeps sending me messages. It's slow coming back, round and round and round. Here we go. Maybe we'll get there with him. Hey, good morning.
Well, that took a while.
How are you? We're live.
Okay. All right.
So
Sorry, everybody.
I was just saying, I just went live. I was just going
Okay.
live, and I was just reading out to everybody how you said slow coming back, round and round and round.
Yeah.
So you were indicating that the thing was just going round and round on your computer, right?
That's right.
We got a good morning from Mike Cushman already. Good morning, Mike. Yep. Okay. So thank you, and I just thought I'd start and get introducing, because I could talk about the Environment Canada message first of all, without really going, without really disturbing anything. All right. Okay. So Environment Canada issuing a heat warning for most of Ontario. What they are talking about is a prolonged heat event. Daytime highs through much of this week, much of the week, are expected to be 30 to 35 degrees, and you should stay inside as much as you can. Dangerous and hot, humid conditions are expected through most of the week, is what they're saying on their website.
Yeah, we're going to have a heat wave here. This is a kind of a heat wave that's going to go right from the Midwest of the United States, right through southern Ontario and Quebec, and into New England. And the temperatures in like places like Manchester, New Hampshire, which is the capital of New Hampshire, will be up to 100 in June. It's not even summertime yet. We haven't hit the solstice yet. That's a couple days away yet.
Yeah.
So I think on the 20th is the solstice this year.
Fridays.
We're not even in this. We're not even out of spring, and we're getting temperatures of 100 degrees in New England. It was 97.
Well, the one thing
right on the lake is Chicago. Chicago was right on the lake, and it had no moderating ability when it came to a 97 degree Fahrenheit temperature there.
Well, they talk, as I said, 30 to 35 most of the week. They're talking about London, Waterloo, Guelph, Mississauga, Brampton, Halton Hills, Milton, Durham, Niagara, Simcoe County, Parry Sound, Muskoka, Halliburton, Minden area, Peterborough, Kawartha Lakes, Renfrew, Arn Prior, Calabogie, North Bay, and Powassan areas, and Windsor. They put Windsor in there as if they'd forgotten it at the bottom end of the article.
Yeah, so look, 100 degrees is nearly 38 degrees.
37. It's 37.9, I think.
37.778 it says here. So
okay. Yeah,
it's,
okay.
Yeah, but anyway, call it 38 degrees.
Yeah.
Call it 38 degrees because it's like 37 3/4.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 38 degrees. My God, the hottest temperature I've ever experienced. I don't know. You probably experienced some pretty hot ones in Saudi, right? When you're there in Saudi Arabia.
51.
51?
Yeah.
52 for me. 52 in April. There's this week in April every year. It was the hottest of all year long. Like normally it was about 36 degrees.
Yeah.
Like you could probably it was going to get to 36 to stay there most of the day really quick. But there's this week in April, and it was, like I said, it wasn't even the summer. That would be the hottest for some reason. 52. Yeah. I mean, it was unbearable.
It was like you go out in Riyadh, and the interesting thing about going out in Riyadh is it was hot, but but there was no sweat on your brow. Your sweat was instantly dried because of the dry heat of the where you were in the middle of the desert. But you go out in Dammam on the coast of Saudi Arabia, on the Gulf Coast, Gulf Coast out there, and you get out of your car, which is air conditioned, you step out into the atmosphere and you're sweating buckets. Every pore in your body is sweating buckets.
Yeah, especially if you come out of an air conditioner. If you're in a nice cold place and walk into a hot humid place, you're just gonna the first half is probably condensation.
Yeah.
Feels like it anyway.
Well, yeah, but you're out for, in Riyadh, you're out for a minute and you're not dripping sweat at all. It just evaporates off your body. In Bahrain, it's pouring off your body.
Wow. Well, that's because of the sea and everything. Well, yeah. Well, we are in for it this year. Seems for the last 12 years running, we've had the hottest years in recorded history in the last 12 years, and or is it the last 12 months have been the hottest in recorded history?
12 months were the hottest in recorded history. Yeah. So this is basically just adding to that.
Yes. So the last 12 months as a world temperature, we've had the hottest temperatures.
1.6 degrees higher than the rest of the time. 1.6 degrees is quite a bit when you consider that you're talking about a global average.
That's huge. It's incredible. Yeah. People don't understand that. That makes a big difference.
See, 1.6 degrees
it's like a little bit of DNA, you know what I mean?
Yeah. 1.6 degrees might not be very much if we're talking about our temperature here in Niagara, for example. We go, it's 1.6 degrees higher this year than it was last year. Well, we just go, yeah, okay. We didn't have much in the way of snow this year, but it was still cold in winter, and we didn't have much. It's hot in the summer. Well, we wouldn't think about it too much, would we? 1.6 degrees, but as a global thing, that's a massive amount.
Yeah, and there are weather patterns right now that are happening in the United States, and as well, we had our guest Jim Lever. As a matter of fact, I just got a message from him. He just finished sailing from Bermuda to the Azores. I might be able to join him for the Azores to Madrid. We'll see. Anyway. So he was the one that told us that he was worked for the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers.
Yeah, and
he said a huge amount of all these Midwestern military sites, the big ones. I mean, these are huge, are no longer functioning well. It's too hot. The weather's changed so much, and this was back when he was on our show, and it's even worse now. That they're going to have to change the location of those military bases, bring them up farther north, because they're just impossible to. They're working in 40 degree Celsius or plus every day. Metaphysical Mike says, "I was a hammersmith for 14 years." Whoa, yeah, you're in the forge. Oh. Yeah, I remember working the forge in GM when they had it on Ontario Avenue there. 52 degrees. How did you breathe? Well, you know what, Mike? It was just like under a heat lamp. It was just so oppressive. You had to be in the shade. Even just being in a little bit of shade was all right. Most of us stayed in that day. Because it was impossible to work, but I felt I had to walk into the compound, walk across the sand of the compound. The sand was just scorching my feet, even though I had work boots on, and I couldn't pick up anything that was metal, even if it had been in the
you can't
sun.
touch metal. Yeah. It's like,
even
how
even if it had been in the shade, it was just hot. I had to put gloves on.
Yeah. You touch it and it's like you're touching something that's on fire. It's like touching the cooker, right?
Yeah.
So
I walked from the camp to the compound.
and
exactly halfway through there, I instantly regretted it.
Well, I was going to say at 51, what we were doing is you get from the building to the car as quickly as possible. Right?
Yeah. So it was probably more than 52 degrees because the thermometer they were using was most accurate in the middle zone. That's what it was designed for. Right? Yeah. So the low end was probably not as cool as it said, and the high end was probably less more hot than it said, and the low end, because the spring action, this was a spring action thermocouple. It's very accurate, very accurate for turbines, but that middle zone is the most accurate. And we were right over to one side, so it was probably right pushing the spring. So we were probably even more than 52, but it was and they were taking that temperature in the shade too. That's another thing.
Just for your information, where I am, it's raining.
Yeah, here too. There's thundering too.
It wasn't raining this morning, but it is. It wasn't raining when we started, but it is now. I was just looking out the window and thinking,
it was raining It was raining here when we started.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say I can't say I looked out the window when we started, but looking out the window now, it's definitely raining.
Well, we know how hot it is if the rain doesn't reach the ground and goes into steam before it, loving the heat. Chris Simone loves the heat. Okay. He's one of the so the heat is going to be a big problem. I don't know if we're in a drought zone for the middle part of the United States. It could be. There's going to be water issues. There's going to be power issues. The amount of power that we can generate to cover all the air conditioners that are going. I haven't yet had to use mine yet. I don't know about you, but I haven't had to use mine yet.
And the thing is,
I'm on the ground floor of a condo, so I'm more insulated in this corner.
I was going to say you're more being in an apartment block. You're more insulated than individual homes. Essentially, we switched ours on beginning of the month moved from heating to cooling. Although it wasn't heating very much at that point.
Yeah, and what I'll probably do a little later on, I might. It depends on how hot it gets. If it stays under 80, I'm usually okay with fans. But if it starts to get a little hotter than that, or if there's then I'll. A friend of mine, what he does is he keeps his going during the nighttime, and keeps the house locked up during the day, and that works pretty good for him.
What, the AC or the fan?
He turns the AC on at night, for a few hours at night, and then keeps the house locked up after that. And he cools down the house. He cools it down when the power rate's very low.
Yeah.
Right. And then he just shuts up the house for the rest of the day, and it works for him.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. So many municipalities, including Niagara, are opening cooling centers. So if you need a cooling center, go check them out. We put something up. Okay, so let's see if I can find a. Let's see if I can find the local cooling centers.
Okay. In the meantime, this is going to be what's going to happen. And as we reported on this show, the scientists have come up with a new sort of system of checking the weather. And 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, 2022, I think they came out, or maybe even before that. They were looking at the health condition of the atmosphere, and their calculations told us that global warming would happen a lot faster than we think it's going to happen up until now. They ignored that because they felt that they had made a mistake, because it didn't really jive too well with what they had thought before. But they've reopened that and realized that they weren't so far off. And there is a possibility that heat could accelerate very quickly. We're very certain that we're not going to be able to make that target of 1.5 degrees or whatever. They're trying to limit the increase in global temperature to 1.5. We're not going to make that at all. It's not even going to come close. But to keep going along that line and to try to reduce the amount of carbon in the air, etc., will help. It's going to be very, very hard, though. You have a burgeoning population. You have more people even on motor scooters than you ever have had before. When China industrialized, I remember I was watching this guy. I can't remember. I think he was a British guy, but it could be an American anyway. He was in China in the early 70s, and they had decided to industrialize China and join the capitalistic world. And he said that was going to be a mini disaster. He said it was going to be okay for China to improve their economy in that, but to switch the fields that were used for rice and to introduce more industrial pollution was going to be a terrible thing for the planet because of the huge number of Chinese. He said that back then, in the 70s, that is going to turn the temperature of the earth warmer. And he was right. I still remember that guy. And
all right. So just for everybody, cooling centers down in the comments. I've got two of them, one by Niagara Regional Transit and the other by the city of Niagara Falls.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Homeless. You can find your place to cool down.
And Karen Fraser says good morning.
Good morning, Karen.
Not just for the homeless. If you happen to be called outside and it's extremely hot, get yourself inside to one of these cooling centers.
Karen's got a show for seniors, for any of you people out there that are seniors, like not me, but
And you're telling me you're not a senior?
I'm in senior denial.
Yeah, I think you and I as well, Dave. We're both seniors in denial. Yeah.
I'm going to get better any day now. I know it.
I get younger. I get younger with every day I get older.
Yeah. Well, I'm just kind of looking at the mirror through a filter now. That helps. That helps with the delusion.
Delusion, yes. I can't help you and your delusions.
No, of course you couldn't. Which one would you choose? There's so many of them. Which one do we work on today, Dave?
I don't know. I think your psychotherapist must make a fortune off you, Dave.
No, he's got his own psychotherapist now that he's been working with me.
Well, it's a good job I've got my own psychotherapist. Lynn, help me. Dave's at it again. All right.
Well, yeah. Well, obviously, Karen Fraser doesn't need a psychotherapist. She realizes she's a senior, accepts it. I'm not going down that road right now, though.
Right. Okay. Jagmeet Singh has read that report and is alarmed after reading that intelligence report, the unredacted version of it. Clearly, he signed the act. He's gone in to read it, and he's concerned. Right?
Yeah. like last week, we told about Elizabeth May, who got her security clearance, went in, read the unredacted report. And what did she say? She came to the podium, basically, and she said to all the reporters and everybody there, well, I'm pretty well convinced we got no problems at all. There were a few problems, but they're unintentional. They're not all that bad at all. They're just mistakes, so there's nothing really to worry about here. Okay, so everybody thinks, well, okay, it's political theater. It's like they're overblowing this thing. So okay, conservatives are overblowing it. We probably have, well, that's kind of like their job. So that's what you think. Then along comes Jagmeet Singh. He says it's really terrible. It's a lot worse than he thought. The country's in danger. What?
Yeah.
Is that? We have two completely opposite views from two party leaders.
Well, I think that Jagmeet Singh, I would take Jagmeet Singh's, what he's saying here, quite seriously. Because here's the thing. He's saying there are a number of MPs who have knowingly provided help to foreign governments, some to be to the detriment of Canada and Canadians. And that should concern everybody.
Yes. Seriously, there's a now one of the reasons why I think he said what he did is once he read it, and I think he's very confident there's no NDP on there. If there was, I think his words would have been different. I think he's looked at it, saw that there are no NDP MPs that have sort of made themselves available for foreign governments, either by ignorance or by design.
Yeah.
He himself, his own party may have found, like he himself as a person, may have found that the Indian government may be working against him because he's a Sikh. He may have found that some of his own parties have been targeted by the Chinese governments, the Russians. The Chinese and the Indian governments are the ones that seem to be meddling more than the other ones right here. I mean, yeah. I'm pretty sure the United States is meddling, but they do it in a more clandestine way.
Yeah.
Well,
actually, the United States doesn't really have to meddle much in Canadian affairs to get what they want, because a lot of Canadians who are born as close as they are to the US have a special ear open for the US anyway, and probably pay more attention to US than they do in almost any other country, including Mexico.
Well, God, they were taking out west. They were taking election advice from Tucker Carlson. It's not even a Canadian.
Yeah, quite.
Remember he was invited to the conservative.
I know.
Thing
Yeah, but we have we have and always have had a large American influence here. A large percentage of the time we kind of, we listen to the Americans and ignore what the Americans want, because we can see a clearer picture than Americans see of a Canadian future. But of course, there are other times when people are, the Americans don't have to pay people to get them to see them things their way, right?
No, but the Americans have meddled, and I remember them meddling in the Australian election back in the 70s because they felt the Socialist Party was going to win, and they got caught.
They've been meddling in Central and South America for so long that everybody's forgotten about it.
And right now, we were talking about the meddling of the Israeli lobby in the United States, and you can pretty well figure there's a version of the Israeli lobby in Canada. There was in fact, there of course there's an Israeli lobby in UK that's beginning to make itself a nuisance too.
Well,
That's a foreign government. So I don't like. Would they include that in this particular report?
Yeah.
Or are they just strictly because that's probably a legal lobby? So are they really just worried about India and China and that? I have a feeling that Jagmeet Singh was very comfortable with what he read there and saw that his own MPs have not been participants for the most part, and he sees there that the conservative and liberal MPs are probably the ones they're talking about. Now, Poilievre has refused to take a security clearance to read the unredacted report, because if he reads the unredacted report, he can't say anything about it. However, how good is this whole process anyway? When Elizabeth May walks up and says nothing's wrong, and then Jagmeet Singh says everything's wrong, and he hints that the liberals and conservatives have a real problem. When you do that, you are already by suggestion narrowing the field of interpretations of that report by adding a little bit of a fact here and a fact there. Well, none of our party or this or that was in it, and pretty soon the whole idea of having this be unredacted and close to a security clearance and then making comments on it, what good is it then?
Well, here Singh is basically saying this is one of the areas that should concern most people. Some of the cases he's read about appear to be criminal and should be prosecuted, and all of the behavior cited in the report was deeply unethical. And further, I'm more convinced than ever the conclusions of NSICOP committee and the report that some parliamentaries are willing participants in the efforts of foreign states to interfere in our politics, and those that are involved are traitors to the country, right? So he's speaking very bluntly there. He doesn't name names, obviously, but the thing is, question really one is open one as to why security services aren't taking these people into custody and prosecuting.
Well, of course, the investigations have to happen, and you cannot put somebody in jail or besmirch their character until proven innocent. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty, and this is our system.
Yeah.
So nobody can be besmirched, but if there's strong evidence that everybody knows, then they can suspend an MP or something like that. But for now, you don't want to do anything that would besmirch their character if you get it wrong. You just don't want to do that.
He's using very strong language there. Let's be blunt about that. And Theresa May was not. Theresa May never said anything of the kind.
No, it's a complete opposite.
Sorry,
nothing to see here. Basically, she said nothing to see here. Move along. Nothing to see here. Yeah. Jagmeet Singh comes along and says the Earth is, the end of times are nigh. Elizabeth May would say, "Oh, we can walk through the garden of flowers. It's wonderful here." Why the opposite interpretation? Why they both read the same unredacted report and they came with staggering opposite conclusions. But I'll tell you something. If Jagmeet Singh found one or two of his own MPs on this list, he would have worded it much different. He would have made it, he would have put cautionary terminology in his statement, but he wouldn't have spoken it like that, because it would imply that his own party is part of treason. Now, that Politico article we read last week that claimed that there was treason in the Canadian Parliament, and we thought they were overstating it. No, according to Singh, if that Politico article was not an overstatement that we read, there is treason afoot. There is illegal action. I have a feeling. I'm not so sure if it's so much election interference is MPs making a pretty penny by working with the Chinese or the Indians or some other foreign agency to make a whole lot of money. I think greed is the thing, probably more than espionage, that is the thing that's just the driver here. I would wager that a big part of the so-called treasonous actions of certain MPs has to do more with them getting money and power or getting wealth than it has to do with any kind of political ideology.
Probably. It's a possibility, right?
Well, the Chinese government comes along to you and it says, that oil field over there, it's for sale. We want to buy it. And this is the company you're going to sell it to. And then this is the company we want it sold to. It doesn't look like a Chinese company, but really is. So if you can help us out there, here's a stack of cash for you. We heard it was your birthday. That brand new swimming pool we just built in your backyard. That's also a present. That kind of thing,
Yeah. And, well, basically, okay, so what Elizabeth May has said, I'm very comfortable sitting with my colleagues, right? And are there currently MPs sitting with us in the chamber who would set out knowingly to sell out Canada for personal benefit? If there are, there's no evidence in that report, is what she said.
And then Jagmeet Singh just says the opposite of her.
Yeah.
Absolute opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't be more stark.
Well, at the end of the day, how many colleagues has Elizabeth May got in Parliament? Neil?
Every one of the parliamentarians are technically a colleague.
Well, I know. What I mean is, how many Green Party members are there in Parliament? Neil, apart from her?
No, she was talking about Parliament as a whole. She wasn't talking about her little tiny party. No.
Yeah. But
so she was talking about Parliament, and she had no problem sitting with her colleagues, and her colleagues are other parliamentarians, not just the Green Party.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know that. I'm just saying that it's like she has on a party political level, she has nobody to protect. So why wouldn't she be saying the same as Jagmeet Singh?
I'm serious. Like, I didn't even know if she read it sounds like she read a completely different
report,
unredacted report. I know for certain. I have a very strong feeling, at least, that Jagmeet Singh would have worded it differently if he found some of his own MPs involved or implicated.
Yeah,
he would have. He may have sounded the alarm, but he would have used less strong language. Let's put it that way.
All right. Let's call a spade a spade. Lobbyists are bravers, yes.
Basically,
I don't like. You see, the idea of lobbying is for people like you and I, Mike, to go up there to say, "Hey, Mr. MP, you're putting in new bill number 76, and I don't like it. You're failing to take into consideration members of your constituency. I think you should think again about X and Y and Z." Right? It's not that's not to have corporations going up there and saying, "Hey, man, we'll give you cash for policies."
We think of like the big companies having lobby groups in Ottawa. We got the kind of strange one like the Israeli lobby. That's a bit strange, that one. But other ones are more towards sections in, like you may have a Saudi lobby in Ottawa. You probably do. In fact, you have a Saudi Arabian lobby in the United States. You have veterinarians have a lobby in Ottawa. Dentists have a lobby in Ottawa. That's what they use to bring their concerns to the government when the government comes to start making policy. Karen
Here's the
Fraser
key,
says,
yeah,
I
here's
thought
a key
both
fact.
of them used words to emphasize their own spin. Elizabeth said she was satisfied that at this time there's nothing to worry about, but there is someone in the past who should be arrested. Yeah, but to have so much of a difference between one and the other, especially Jagmeet Singh knowing what Elizabeth May has said, and then goes on to say what he said, makes her look stupid, or makes himself look stupid in the end. Whenever it all is revealed, we'll see which one is dumb and which one was smart. You're right about the spin part, though. You really are right about the spin. You never get the truth out of these people. You do get a spin.
And people in the past is another matter, because in fact, actually, those people that are prior MPs, go after them. If you've got the evidence, just go after them and arrest them in time.
But that's the thing,
one of the challenges about past MPs is there's nothing under our system. Generally speaking, there's nothing to stop them coming back.
Oh no, like Kathleen Wynne was supposed to be up on a bunch of different charges by the time she finished her tenure in government, but of course nobody went after her.
Nobody went after her. No, absolutely, yeah.
All
right,
and so but my point here is lobby is an important part of government. Like I said, veterinarians have a lobby. Your dentists have a lobby.
Yes,
it's all kinds of like tiddlywink manufacturers may have a lobby. Anyone who thinks they have to keep in touch with what the government is doing.
But unlike you and I, essentially many of these lobbyists that are paid lobbyists and that they end up in a situation whereby some industrial lobbyists don't just get one vote as to who enters parliament, and that's it. They get multiple votes because their people are hammering on the door of MPs saying, by the way, it's about time you support my bill.
Yeah, that's what they do. As a matter of fact, it's more evident in the United States. They do it in the United States, sort of more better or more out in the open kind of thing, or at least those congressmen and senators who are frank about what a lobbyist does in the United States. So what they do is they put money in your campaign or support your campaign in some way or another. And then when they need you, they come knocking at the door. And they usually bring somebody from your own constituency or somebody you know that you've met, maybe not a friend of yours, but certain somebody you've met somewhere in a club. You might be part of the Kiwanis Club or the Lions Club or something like that. And then they'll bring the guy and say, well, remember all that money we gave to you? Well, guess what? We have now we come calling, and now you're supposed to do what we want you to do. We want you to listen. They don't really say you have to do this, but they make it very clear that they gave you money, and that money for your next election is at risk if you don't see it their way.
Yep. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. St. Catharines, the Fraser neighborhood in St. Catharines that's going to be underneath the kind of St. Catharines end of the Skyway is the new twinning of the bridge on the Skyway is hoping for some goodwill from the province to support their neighborhood. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, this is not, when I read it, I thought to myself, whoa, that's rather brash. They're going in and say, look, you're gonna build this, you're gonna twin the bridge, and it's gonna affect our neighborhood, obviously, because if you look at the map, I suppose the twinning is going to happen on the north side of the existing bridge.
Yeah,
because it's Fraser Street and St. George Street area in St. Catharines that are the ones that are mentioning this.
Well, actually, the funny thing is about that is that the direct impact of twinning happens east of the Facer Street area. Right, Facer District. It's basically the Welland Avenue and the northern side of there that's going to actually be impacted most. Not so much Facer Street, because Facer Street is a neighborhood that is north of Niagara Street. So if you follow Niagara Street up across the QEW, that's the Facer District.
I know where it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know where it is. Yeah. And that's in that neighborhood they're talking about, Facer and St. George. That's just almost exactly in the middle of the run of Facer Street. The length of Facer Street.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's not as close to the QEW as that Welland Avenue is going to be. And my route into St. Catharines is to get off the QEW at Welland Avenue. And if that twinning, with the result of that twinning, we've already seen the fact that Furniture Gallery moved their store. So that twinning is going to happen in the, it's going to have the most direct effect in that neighborhood down on Welland Avenue.
Well, obviously, the people in and around Facer Street and the others feel that something's going to affect them. They're going to be affected by construction. Well, that will be obvious. There'll be trucks coming. There'll be dust kicked up.
Yeah.
And this will last for a very long time. And the fact that they're now walking up to the government with hat in hand saying, our neighborhood and our area here is going to be incredibly affected by this twinning of the bridge. It's going to change things here. So we'll put up with it, but we want money. We want money for parks. We want money for beautification. We want this, we want that. And we want several $1 million worth of that stuff. And then when I read it, I thought to myself, God, that's brazen. But when you think about the Gordie Howe Bridge that they're building in Windsor right now, Windsor, Detroit, the Gordie Howe Bridge, they've done that. They've actually done that. They have invested in the neighborhoods in and around where that span is going to end up. So they have come up with money. It is part of, and I think it's mentioned here, part of the human resources, or how would I say, PR, public relations works. Here, it is something to help the people adapt to the bridge, get them something out of it for having to put up with construction and irritation and stoppages in traffic and all those kind of things that might happen in and around their neighborhood. Maybe not directly in it. It doesn't look like Facer Street knows it's going to survive this, that the bridge is not going to just push them out at all like that. They're going to still exist, but they're going to exist in a different situation.
As far as I'm aware, all the existing junctions will continue to exist after the twinning has completed. Yes,
and but it's going to take up space somewhere.
Well,
that bridge is going to take up space, whether you like it or not.
Oh yes, absolutely, it's going to take up space.
It's going to eat up some. It's going to eat up real estate.
Yeah.
So the construction and it is going to affect those areas in and around that bridge, and Facer Street is one of those. How then they're looking for some kind of compensation, and of course they've got their hat in hand to the developer and the Ford government. And I thought it was brazen until I looked it up. This is a common thing. If you're doing a construction of a bridge or a building or something that's going to change the nature of the neighborhood, or you can make your case that it is, you can get some cash payoff from the government. In this particular case, they're looking for more parks, and I think it's in the article somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, actually, at that Facer district is actually currently quite run down. I had to go up there. Visit somebody up there on business, and yeah, you know, theirs was a nice office, but the rest of the neighborhood is like, well, it looks as if it needed 20 years of uplift. It looked as if it had been, you know, let down by the whole of St. Catharines.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. It like, yeah, by the pictures they give there, yeah, it didn't look too good to me either.
Well, that, yeah.
And I kind of remember going down there, so it doesn't look like a really good, but it says with the upcoming Garden City twinning near the neighborhood and the possible noise, dust, traffic, and other issues that come, a new citizens group is hoping to convince the province and builder to pony up some money as a goodwill gesture. There you have it. And it talks about Fraser Street, and they had a meeting at St. Catharines Aquatic Center. Great place. If you're living in St. Catharines, you want your kids to go to that aquatic center, learn to swim for sure. They got a really nice building. I've been to meetings there. The sky is the limit, said Fraser. Of course, the Skyway. If we don't ask, we don't achieve anything, right? So, okay, so they're getting right. Less than 3 months old, the volunteer group is working with Niagara Community Benefits Network, which is a real organization. An organization that aims to ensure economic impact of large development projects includes investment into the well-being of the community.
By the way, Karen makes the praise of don't have much time faith in the region handling the new bridge, considering the Burgoyne Bridge mess. Remember, Karen, this is a provincial project, not a regional project. So the region isn't doing the bridge work. The province is.
Yeah, so the province is going to build a wonderful big bridge over it, and Doug Ford will probably try to save money on cheap steel. So if it collapses, then he'll blame the region.
Well, actually, the question about
you got the steel from the region.
One of the questions about steel and that sort of thing in relation to the current bridge is one of the questions about what they want to do with the current bridge after the new bridge is to actually largely rebuild it. Some of those massive, great stanchions they've got there need rebuilding, and that's part of the new. That's part of the reason for twinning.
Yeah, you can see the concrete pillars in that have been spalling. The water and the salt and things like that come off of the bridge has done some real big damage, and they got to redo it. I will say this about the Gordie Howe Bridge that they're talking about, that's huge bridge, that they have coatings on the steel that will last 40 years before they have to be even looked at. So the bridges are being much more protected nowadays by coatings that are available. But here's a sum up, basically. Oh, darn it. It just went away on me. Damn you. Oh, smokes. If you touch something just as lightly, you lose the article. But I had a good sum up on the article about what they're trying to do. And it's basically, if I could find it, community benefits agreement. This is it. A community benefits agreement could include financial, social, or other benefits for the area, such as a pledge to hire local labor. That's a good one. I like that one. I really do like that one. That is essential, right? I didn't know that wasn't. Well, I read it the other day, so I did know it was included. But when I first read the article, I had no idea about that part of it, and that's a big deal to me. Having had long stretches of unemployment tell me that is something that's important to me. Make purchases from local businesses. That's another big one.
Yeah.
And create a community fund, including green initiatives make community improvements. In fact, then it shows a picture of Facer Street, which doesn't look too welcoming. It doesn't look too enduring, at least. But at home is home. Wherever your home is, that's where you're home. So from the outside looking in, these community improvements would probably make this area much nicer for the people who live there. And who could argue that? Who could argue that?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the shopping areas, you want more vibrant shoppings. You want shops that are open when local people need them. In terms of the living areas, you want vibrant living space. You want that's fully occupied, and access to the area as you need it. Buses and the like. And one of the problems, aquatic center, Angela was telling me one big problem about, she loves swimming, but she can't go to the aquatic center because of buses.
Yeah,
buses stop too early.
Yeah, and the operators of the casino. Here's examples of where it's happened in other places. Community benefits agreements, or CBAs. The operators of the casino Woodbine in Rexdale area of Toronto signed an agreement that included giving $5 million towards a child care center for the use of the casino employees and local residents. Currently under construction, the Gordie Howe International Bridge, and that is some engineering marvel, I can tell you. Wow, I looked at that and the plans of that. You want to take a look at that if you're a guy. I don't think women really get
you're into engineering, basically.
Yeah. So if you like that kind of thing, have a real good look at it. It's amazing. Excellent architecture, engineering. And anyway, currently under construction, Gordie Howe International Bridge between Windsor and Detroit has a CBA, which includes $20 million in investments on both sides of the border. See, so the people here, I have to tip my hat off. Facer Forward, that's the organization that's trying to make things, try to hit up the government and the developer for some money in this neighborhood. Facer Forward co-chair Mike Britton said the CBA helps build goodwill towards the developers.
By the way, remember Mike Britton, who ran 2 years ago for the mayor of St. Catharines. That's who Mike Britton is.
Well, I have to really take my hat off. Somebody's thinking there. And if you think of Facer, the Facer neighborhood, and it is a very humble area, and you wouldn't think that they would jump on an opportunity like this. Normally, when a neighborhood like this is a humble neighborhood, and its residents are not typically aware of things like that that are available, they usually come to the table rather late looking for a handout from the government. But in this case, they're all on top of it, and I got to really tip my hat, because this whole neighborhood, this whole area can be super improved with money from the developer and the government as compensate for what they're about to go through. I think it's a really good idea, and I tip my hat.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So Chris Biddle, who is the St. Catharines Liberal MP, basically is saying anti-Semitism is increasing, including in Niagara in the 9 months since the Gaza conflict began. It isn't going, and anti-Semitism isn't going to help Palestinians, is what he's saying.
Well, there's some argument in there, and if you read that, and I don't think they should have mentioned that way or titled it that way. I would say anti-Semitism with a question mark, because what is anti-Semitism, and whose definition are you going to use?
Yeah. Well,
if you use the Israeli lobby definition or Bibi Netanyahu's definition, anything that is anti-Zionist or anti-Israel is anti-Semitic. And this, when many of these groups include lots of Jewish activists. So how is a Jewish activist going to be an anti-Semite? In fact, the group that Biddle's talking about here has Jews in among them. And how is it they are anti-Semitic? So I would like to know Biddle's definition of anti-Semitism. Does it include anti-Zionism? Does it include anti-Israeli? And is it really anti? It's really just complaints or notice.
And you see, how does he describe people like you and I? We've both of us have more or less stated in slightly different words that right from the outset of this, that we were opposed to the Hamas action that Hamas took, and we were opposed to the Israeli action that countered that, because of the mass murder, mass killings that have occurred in that whole time since. And we're both concerned about people being anti-Jewish and people being anti-Islamic.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of anti-Islamophobia out there. Now they're talking about, I don't think Biddle even knows what anti-Semitism is. Anti-Semitism is not anti-Zionism. Anti-Semitism is not anti-colonialism in there, although not according to Netanyahu or anyone else. But in here, the spokesperson for the rally said the rally participants want to end the conflict, while perceived anti-Semitism is detracting from their message. They say it's perceived. They're not really anti-Semitic, but they're labeled with that. Yeah. Well, we talked about that guy, Thomas Massey, who was the Republican in the United States, who defied AIPAC and the Israeli lobby, but he's being smeared with the anti-Semite label continually because he wouldn't abide by what they wanted him to do. So one of the reasons why the way they fight him is call him an anti-Semite and say that him and Iran and Hamas are the things that are attacking, are the biggest dangers to Israel. And I have a feeling that there's a lot of that here. There's an exaggeration on the anti-Semitism side. Well, you're going to get a nut, though. That's for sure. There's going to be a nut or two in every demonstration.
Oh, every one, yes. Okay, so Desmond Sikira, who's the co-founder of the Niagara Movement for Justice in Palestine, Israel. He's talking about this, and he is basically saying their message is to end the war, end the occupation, because if you don't end the occupation, it's going to go on. That is what's been happening for the last 76 years. This is nothing to do with anti-Semitism at all. That's his words on this.
Yes. And however, there is a feeling of unease among Niagara's Jewish community. We don't want that. We don't want that at all.
No. Even
though some of that Niagara Jewish community is part of the demonstrations, which is the irony here. So they are there. Of course, there's going to be the odd nut bar. As a matter of fact, if I was trying to counter this demonstration, let's say I wanted to make this the demonstrations look bad, I would include myself and rail against Semites like a Nazi, or you know what I mean? Rail against the Jewish state like I was a Nazi, to give the organization a bad name. You're going to get the odd nut. You're going to get this stupid person, the radical, who will say something utterly ugly. But on the most part, these organizations, which I will say again include Jewish members of our community here in Ontario, are against the war. They are against the oppression.
Yeah.
They are against the apartheid state. If you say apartheid state, you're anti-Semitic. Are you anti-Semitic if you call Israel an apartheid state? Israel proper is an apartheid state, but Israel and the West Bank is an apartheid state. It is a controlling and oppressive power over the Gazans in the West and Palestinians in the West Bank. It's made it very clear that it wants to expel those people. Netanyahu, a couple of weeks before before the October 7th war in September, went to the United Nations and showed everybody there a picture of Israel, which included, without borders, the West Bank and Gaza. This is what Israel is right here. In the Likud party, it says, number one on its charter says, Israel will be a nation of Jews from the river, the Jordan River, to the sea. And that's including the West Bank and Gaza. They want those Palestinians out. So that is the truth here, too, that Biddle has to recognize. If he wants to say, well, that's anti-Semitic, well, Mr. Biddle, you have to also realize what caused this in the beginning. And I don't think many of our politicians here are even willing to touch that.
And that's part of the problem that I think we have, is none of them are being realistic about taking a realistic approach. It's like we've gotten this scratched record, if you like, which is you can't speak a thing against Jews. And if you can't speak a thing against Jews, therefore you can't speak against Israel.
Well, they call guys like Norman Finkelstein, Ilan Pappé, guys like that. They call them self-hating Jews because they're against what's happened.
Yeah. That's a stupid comment. That's a stupid. It's a stupid argument of self-hating Jews. Like, get over yourself. Stop being an idiot.
Okay. And Biddle says basically Biddle sort of backpedals a bit, and he says Biddle said most of the people have genuine concern for Palestinians, but there are a few that cross the line. That's what I was talking about before. You always get the nutcase that's involved.
Well, you do. Every demonstration has nutcases in it. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It doesn't matter. There's professional demonstration joiners that want to basically turn every single demonstration to their point.
Anti-Semitism isn't going to help Palestinians. I think the Palestinians and the people who are demonstrating know that too. The whole idea is not to be anti-Jew; it's to be pro-Israel, not anti-Jew, and it excludes Jews in their, like I said, like guys like Noam Chomsky, Norm Finkelstein, Ilan Pappé. Yeah, their list can go on. Gideon Levy. They can go on and on and on about truth-speaking Israelis, basically, or Jews who don't like what's going on. That's where I get most of my information about this too. By the way, I get it from people like Noam Chomsky. Those where I get my information from. Like, I don't get it from Palestinians.
And I would say that I'm not saying Noam Chomsky is probably one of your modern day heroes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And
yes, he is.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just making it clear that he is one of your modern day heroes. Right.
Yes, I admire Noam Chomsky incredibly. But I also admire somebody like Dr. Thomas Sowell, who is right of center, and Noam Chomsky is a good deed. But my only issue with Noam Chomsky is his moral compass is just too strong for the average person. I don't know if the average person could live as morally as he would like us to be. But his investigative talent is incredible. A must read is Manufacturing Consent. You'll really understand the Western press very much if you read that. In any case, and Norman Finkelstein is is a powerful truth speaker. Gideon Levy and Elin Pepe, these guys here, there are strong. Chris asked, what is a Zionist? A Zionist is a colonialist. And it'll take a little bit of time for me to answer that, Chris, but I'll give you the quick one. Back in the 1800s, a fellow by the name of Theodor Herzl decided that the Europeans were not going to treat the Jews very well. He was right. He ended up being very right because of the Holocaust came much later. So he started to get people to go back to what was ancient Israel, at that time called Palestine. At that time, only 5% of the people that lived in Palestine were actually Jews, and half of them lived in the city of Jerusalem. But the rest were Christian and Muslim Arabs, mostly Muslim. But the Christians, Arabs, were 5 times more than the Jewish Palestinians. So that was what was now Israel. But what happened was European Jews decided they were going to colonize what is now Palestine, and they did that. And they did that through politics and through terror, by terror campaigns and political campaigns. And they finally got a state. And quickly thereafter, the Palestinians had half the land, they had half the land. And quickly after that, the Israelis took the other half of the land and forced all the Arabs out, whether they're Christian or Muslim. They forced them out. It's called the Nakba, and they forced them out. And those people now, those became refugees. 70% of the people who live in Gaza now are descendant of those refugees that came there in 1948. 90% of Jordan is made up of Palestinian refugees. Palestinian refugees live in Egypt. They live in Libya. They live in Lebanon, and they live in Syria. They live all over the place.
Yeah,
that's the Palestinian diaspora. But unfortunately, there's a thing called the West Bank. It used to belong to Jordan, but Israel captured it during the 1967 war, and they decided to colonize it. And it was supposed to be the land where Palestinians could finally have a homeland, but Israel decided they're going to colonize it, and also they want to colonize Gaza as well. It's a very complicated story, and of course, those people who are oppressed, the Palestinians, are fighting back by any means they can, and the oppressors keep oppressing. So the oppressors murder, and those who are oppressed murder, and that's what happened on October 7th. All
right.
It was a terrible reaction to terrible reactions.
Yeah, and we're running massively over time, Dave, and because that was an important question to ask, I think we're going to have to leave it there.
Yeah, so a Zionist is basically a Jewish colonist from mostly from Europe who has decided that the Holy Land belongs to them, and they're coming back after 2,000 years to push the Arabs off the land and take it for themselves. And that's largely what they did.
Yeah. And it's a movement that started basically in the 1890s. And Dave, your traditional ending?
Without further ado, I bid you adieu, everyone. Let's pray for peace. Let's get this sorted out where Jew and Arab can live peacefully side by side. It's possible. It really is possible.
Yeah.